Hello and welcome to our episode today that deals with Principle of News Editing. Our subject expert is Mr. Saad bin Zia and I am Monica Verma. Mr. Saad is a seasoned journalist with over a decade of industry experience in all genres journalism. In today's episode, we will learn about the roles, responsibilities, functions and composition of an editorial desk. We will find out what are the weaknesses that make a news copy bad. We will gain knowledge of what is editing and what are the principles of editing. We will understand the KISS formula as well as the inverted pyramid structure of news writing. We will briefly discuss the principles of rank ordering. Editing is an exacting problem. Many factors contribute to making the selection and presentation of timely, relevant information a task as daunting as it is necessary. The task of an editor then is to examine the news for a given day and try to find the meaning in it. That is, not only to understand the article, but also to understand its context. What is new or timely? What is of importance? What is of high general interest? What does the reader need to know about? What would the reader like to know about? What informs, educates, guides, or entertains? How many articles on a topic are appropriate? And if the answer is not all of them, then what should be kept and what discarded? Gruhl and Bender, in an article, A New Structure for News Editing, in IBM Systems Journal. Editorial desk. Editorial desk performs a very critical role in the whole news process. In fact, the editorial desk is the backbone of a news organization. Another important duty of the editorial desk is to make a rather dull-looking and boring story attractive. Editorial desk comprises a number of desk staff that performs the editing function before a news copy is released for publishing. There is a wide spectrum of designations and ranks in the editorial desk, ranging from a trainee editor to the chief editor. Susan Pape and Sue Featherstone, 2005, 2-9, describes the roles and responsibilities of different editors in an editorial desk. Editor. The editor hires and fires, has final say over editorial decisions and decides the direction the newspaper will take on particular issues. He or she may be a hands-on editor, in which case he or she will spend more time in the newsroom than one who isn't. But managerial and commercial matters take up much of the editor's time, and he or she will be involved in seemingly endless meetings dealing with the business end of advertising, circulation, promotion, and sales penetration. Deputy editor. The deputy editor will have a larger or smaller role depending on the size of the newspaper. He or she might be responsible for either the editorial and newsroom side of the organization or, as chief sub-editor, the sub-editing side. The deputy editor might also take responsibility for campaigns, special supplements, and promotions. Assistant editor. On a small local newspaper, there might be no assistant editor, but on larger newspapers, there could be 2 or 3 assistant editors responsible for news and/or features. An assistant editor is also sometimes known as production editor. News editor. The news editor is the first point of contact when the reporter is out in the field. The general news reporter for the news desk, which is staffed by a news editor and his or her deputies. The number of deputies depends on the size of the paper. On a large regional daily, there could be as many as 3 or 4 news editors. On a small newspaper, there might be only one person in charge who acts as news editor, chief reporter, and feature writer rolled into one. The news editor is responsible for the flow of copy, assessing top stories, and discussing with the production editor or the chief sub-editor which will make a page lead and which could be held over. The news editor decides which are going to be covered and which reporters are going to cover them. He or she will brief reporters, generally suggesting an angle to take, the length of the story that is required, and the deadline for the completed story. Sub-editors. Subs, as they are known, work under chief sub-editor and edit the paper. On large newspapers, there will be sub-editors responsible for specific pages such as news, features or sports, but on smaller papers, a sub-editor would be expected to work on every page. While the job of sub-editor includes designing pages and laying out stories, adding headlines and bylines and picture captions. One of their most important responsibilities involves checking reporters' copy once the news editor, feature editor or sports editor has seen it. They check for accuracy and correct spelling mistakes and any grammatical errors. Sub-editors will also check news copy for potential libel and contempt. Editing. Copy flows to the editor's desk from a number of directions. Some it comes in publishable form, some of it needs a touch here and there, some of it needs extensive revision. To cope with this never-ending task of editing, revising and rewriting copy, the newspaper or magazine has developed a staff of specialists. Editors make decisions about how a copy is to be handled and do some editing themselves. The copy desk and copy editors work mostly with copy after it has been written, revised, and rewritten. Much of the time and effort spent on editing, revising, and improving news copy would not be necessary if the news writer had done a better job in the first place. News writers should be aware of the standards for publishable copy in their newsrooms and should do their best to deliver well-written copy to their editors. All copy to an editor is subject to change and to some revision. No one writes a perfect story, and editors have a knack for pointing weaknesses and knowing ways to improve a raw copy. Editing is a thankless job which requires patience of highest degree. Truly, editing a news piece is a tedious task. It requires not only an excellent command of the concerned language, but also extensive knowledge on a variety of topics. Therefore, the first and foremost goal to be borne in mind while editing a news story is that the elected news item must reflect upon the facts in an objective and balanced manner. Second, most important aspect is of language. It is advisable to use a free-flowing, easy-to-comprehend language. Adjectives and other qualifying words are to be used sparingly. It is not a good idea to adorn the news story with lofty words which makes the news convoluted and incoherent. Editing often involves rewriting the whole news story. Editing also entails chopping off the unnecessary details and cutting short an absurdly long news story to suit the space requirements. Editing calls for making a news story simple, in fact, close to the way we talk, so relatively short sentences and words and some use of cliches which the whole audience understands. Punchy. It must grab the reader's attention, so often uses short rather than long words, active verbs, relatively short sentences, concrete rather than abstract vocabulary, some use but not overuse of adjectives, but also relatively formal, hence no use of contractions. Sentences written in full, no elision or elliptical sentences. Sometimes imagery is used to help create a clearer mental picture for the reader, often including the reporter's byline and a dateline. Some of the principles for making a news story appealing are illustrated below. Important news editing principles. Use active voice. News in passive voice often fails to make an impression and is difficult to comprehend. If the news is written in passive voice, the reader is left helpless in a confusing sea of words. Also, using the be derivatives such as is or was or were causes obscurity in conveying the message. It is suggested to write a news story in active voice as much as possible. This way, you are able to impart more information in less space. For example, the sentence, "Hostages were killed by the kidnappers," can be rewritten as, "Kidnappers killed the hostages." As you can very well see in this sentence, the sentence in passive voice contains more words, takes a bit longer to read, and makes a little bit complex to understand what actually happened. Eschew propositions. Too many propositions kill the essence of the news story. Moreover, using proposition excessively demonstrates the inept handling of the information and editor's lack of knowledge of the concerned language. No doubt, prepositions are a helpful tool to make the news story punchy, but mind you, the careless overdose of prepositions at the same time might prove counterproductive. Hence, the readers may lose interest in the news story. Economy of words. The profession of journalism draws its sustenance on the principle brevity. The thumb rule is that make sentences crispy and lively by doing away with extra words. This not only helps in communicating the information in an efficient style, but also makes the news story fit into the allotted space or time. After a careful examination and in-depth analysis of the evidences and proofs, the judges have unanimously and with one voice have consequently come to the final conclusion that the two accused persons are the actual culprits who had committed the crime of murder. This is a long sentence that contains a series of synonyms, prepositions, and other unrelated words. Hence, it requires editing to make it perfect. Simple editing can condense this sentence into, after carefully examining all the evidences, the judges held the two accused guilty of murder. Flexibility in sentence makeup and length. To make a news report more palatable, it is absolutely essential to intermittently change the style and structure of the sentence. This technique is helpful to sustain the interest of the readers. For example, the boy killed the old lady. The boy left away with gold jewelry. The first sentence contains 6 words while the second sentence contains 7 words. These two sentences can be rewritten as, the boy, after murdering the old lady, left away with gold jewelry. Use relational words. Yes, the rules of journalistic writing stipulate that the news report must comprise small sentences which convey only one meaning. This facilitates straightforward dissemination of information. The readers or listeners or viewers are able to understand the meaning in a much better way without much complication. However, breaking large information in small and short sentences at times results in the message being misunderstood. Also, the time dimension remains unclear. For example, the dacoits decamped with cash and jewelry. The dacoits murdered the old lady. Although both the incidents are connected with each other, yet the interconnected is not visible. Furthermore, the chronology of both the incidents too is ambiguous. It is not clear whether the dacoits first robbed the old lady and then murdered her, or the other way round, that is, the dacoits first murdered the old lady and then robbed her of cash and jewelry. Therefore, in such situations, it becomes imperative to restructure the sentences by combining both of them together and inserting adverb, of, or time clause. The restructured sentence would appear this way. After murdering the old lady, the dacoits decamped with cash and jewelry. The time relationship between the two incidents is also established. Decamping followed murdering and not otherwise. Attribution. Attribution, that is, who said a given statement, is an important part of any news story. Attribution gives the reader the chance to judge the value of any statement. Who said something is often a critical factor in whether that statement is believed or not. The most common attribution word is said. Said is a perfectly good word and should be used more often than not. Verifying a statement means getting someone else, preferably 2 or 3 others, to agree with the statement. No controversial stories should be run without due care in verifying all statements by at least 2 sources. The general rule of attribution is this: if something is obvious to anyone who was there or is common knowledge, it probably does not need to be attributed. If it is someone's opinion or it is not obvious to all who were there, then it needs to be attributed. If an elected or appointed official is making a serious charge, such as political corruption, embezzlement, or theft in office, it is that person's opinion and must be attributed. If the accused person is later convicted in the court of law, the verdict does not have to be attributed. The reader wants to know who said this or that. The reporter needs to protect him or herself if he or she was not at the scene and got his or her information from someone else. If some building is destroyed by fire, anyone can see it by walking by. The statement that the building was destroyed by fire does not need to be attributed. But if the fire was caused by a chemical explosion in the back room, this is not obvious. You could not determine this by looking at the building, so the reader needs to know who said that chemical explosion was the cause of the fire in the building. You must attribute statements about causes of the fire, and since investigations take some time, you are often forced to say investigation is continuing. The kiss and tell formula. Tony Harkup, 2005, 108 describes the kiss and tell formula. Thus, most news stories follow the kiss and tell formula. KISS standing for keep it short and simple, or keep it simple, stupid. Keep it simple as if you are writing for your granny. Complexity, abstract notions, ambiguity, and unanswered questions tend to be frowned upon and subbed out of news copy. As is anything seen as personal comment by the reporter. Principles of rank ordering. Each news story has a different set of facts. Putting those facts in order of importance is called rank ordering, that is, some facts get a higher rank than others. Deciding which facts get higher rank is the job of the reporter. The judgments are based on news values, the unique features of each story, whether similar stories have run recently, and countless other factors. To list them would be non-productive since local factors and timing play an important part in each story. The inverted pyramid style. Traditionally, trainee journalists have been taught to think of the structure of a news story as a triangle, a pyramid, or more commonly, an inverted pyramid. However, it is visualized, the idea is that the most important information should be kept at the top, followed by elaboration and detail, ending up with the least information at the bottom. If the space is short, the material at the bottom can be removed by sub-editors, and what's left should stand alone and still make sense. One of the simplest and most basic ways of organizing a short and uncomplicated news story is the inverted pyramid format. The inverted pyramid story consists of summary lead, the 5W lead, followed by a development in which details are arranged in a descending order of interest or importance. The most important or interesting facts come immediately after the lead, the least important or interesting at the end of the story. The inverted pyramid story has no conclusion, it just stops. The format has one advantage. The story can be cut from the bottom up, paragraph by paragraph, and the point of the story, the essential facts contained in the lead, will not be lost. This way, hasty readers will get gist of the story, and even if they read only the lead or the lead and the first few words of the development. In inverted pyramid style, the first paragraph of the story is a summary lead covering the essential facts of the story. The second paragraph adds specifics. The next paragraph adds useful details. Daniel Chandler and Rod Monday, 2011, page 226 defines inverted pyramid thus: in news reporting, a pattern in which important elements are reported first, where the story is summarized with the background reported briefly at the end. This reflects news values. In traditional practice, facts are presented in the priority order of who did what, where, when, why, and how. The inverted pyramid structure is argued to make it easier for editors to trim from the end. However, the structure of news stories is seldom this clear-cut. In a story based on several sources, each section may echo this overall pattern. Inverted pyramid structure entails top-loading the essential and most interesting elements of a story with supporting information following in order of lesser importance. It was developed during the Civil War to ensure the main facts of the story would not be lost during communication by telegraph. Ray Lacanium in News Writing in Transition 1995 139 suggests the following points to be kept in mind for writing a news writing within the inverted pyramid framework. What is the most important fact in the story for the reader? What is the first thing that the reader needs to know? Which of the 5 W's and an H are important here? How can we write this in the fewest words so the reader can decide whether to read the rest of the story? Inverted pyramid, strengths and weaknesses. The inverted pyramid is only of several kinds of leads that can be used for media writing. It has been the workhorse of journalism for more than 100 years, and it may be less important than before, but it is still very important to the beginning writer. Ray Lacaniemi delineates some of the strengths and weaknesses of the inverted pyramid style. Strengths of inverted pyramid structure. The inverted pyramid forces the writer to think about the story in terms of reader interest. The writer must consciously decide between several facts to see which is of most importance to the reader. This also means that the reader's interest is served. Without really understanding the inverted pyramid, readers know they want to spend as little time as possible with each story. The readers want to know what is in each story for them. If the obituary is of someone they do not know, then the readers can go on to something else. The inverted pyramid story can be cut from the bottom. If the least important is the part of the story, then an editor running short of space can cut from the bottom without having to read the story over again over deadline. Weaknesses of inverted pyramid structure. The inverted pyramid is not a natural form of writing or of conversation. Inverted pyramid structure is not reader-friendly because people do not try to put all 5 W's and H in their conversation. Since the public does not talk this way, therefore, do they understand why the media write this way? And they may have difficulties understanding leads written this way. Simply put, the inverted pyramid can force writers trying to put too much into a sentence. 5 W's and 1 H. Recap. In today's episode, we learned about the roles, responsibilities, functions and composition of an editorial desk. We discovered the weaknesses that make a news copy bad. We also gained knowledge of what is editing and what are the principles of editing for improving the badly written news copy. That's all in today's episode. Hope you will enjoy it. Goodbye and take care.